I can really even explain the relevancy of like what I've done, you know, in this lifetime. It's all about going back to the beginning for me. And so for people to even understand, you know, Nabu in ancient times, you have to understand Babylon. To understand Babylon, you have to understand Marduk, understand that, the Anunnaki, and so all of this kind of comes together to play this cohesive story. And before it could even really be dealt with, enough had to be relayed in the other Mardukite work, enough had to be, you know, brought together so that we would have the stuff to draw from later and be able to relay to people. And it was something, my position was actually withheld for a long time. It was thought to be a distraction if it was to be incorporated. And so what ended up happening was all of the Mardukite work was pretty much treated academically and professionally for a very long time, with leaving my, you know, unique position out of the equation. And so the information of it was withheld. There were people that were working closest with us the last couple of years that obviously knew, but it was not something that was the emphasis of the movement in and of itself. And so it's not like a movement oriented towards that. That wasn't my purpose. But for my purpose, my disclosure, my information, my story to have any relevance, it really went back to Marduk and establishing that in human consciousness for modern times. I mentioned prior that in spite of installing myself into the Babylonian pantheon system, one which me and my own priesthood devised to help in maintaining Anunnaki control over humanity, I hardly feel as though Anunnaki is a fitting word appropriate for me, not having come from the stars directly and being born to an Earth Mother who is also installed as a Mardukite goddess of Babylon, Sarpanit. Prior to the last great extermination of mankind, which I would estimate at 12,000 years ago by your understanding of time, maybe more, the Anunnaki had already been working with Earth genetics for hundreds of thousands of years. Again, maybe longer. The recording of Anunnaki events by Earth time standards can be quite difficult when compared to celestial time. Humans are mostly aware, or unaware, that their perception of fixed time has actually changed since the Anunnaki first began visiting the planet. It actually has. But anyways, primitive workers that were less intelligent than modern humans were arrived at early on, after a lengthy process of repeated strains and mistakes. This was authorized by Enkime, who performed all of the scientific experiments personally, as well as with several assistants, including Marduk and other members of the family. After the settlement of planet Earth, Marduk had reserved himself to becoming the assistant to his father towards his worldly endeavors, thus leaving the military ranks in the Igigi and becoming the first priest of Urdu. As a result, he was able to expand his already significant stores of knowledge by learning the technologies, or magic, that Enkime was proficient in. Father and son immediately began working on the magnum opus, involving the mixing of Anunnaki genetics directly with Homo sapien, the form what anthropologists call Homo sapien sapien. Completely unique and highly improved on all pre-existing human upgrade attempts, significant genetic manipulation was done to advance the being to the height that it could be without jeopardizing the protection of the Anunnaki race. Humans couldn't ever be allowed to be too smart, too aware. So like a lot of what we would call today open source programming, open source systems were installed into human consciousness in the very beginning, but never really fully actualized until folks like me later came along, able to influence the programming of human consciousness in ancient times. Now, this made their magnum opus, Adapa, kind of more perfect than what the individuals could generally aspire to throughout human history thereafter. Adapa was not programmed to be a limited being from the start. And at one juncture, he could even have been as one like the gods, you know, eternal in heaven, but he remained on earth. And while the history of Adapa is fairly accessible, I mean, even our Necronomicon Anunnaki Bible among the Mardukites actually includes the tablet transliterations of this. The significance of a few of his descendants is not as accessible to people. From the 7th generation of Adapa, there's one who is known as Enkime, but this name's kind of lost to the realm of legends and so forth. If you've been following around, if you're kind of a scholar or researcher related to the mysteries prior, then it's quite likely you've happened upon references in texts of these various figures, but usually, like in the case of Enkime, Adapa, and so forth, It's usually better known by its Semitic originating name, like Enoch. And yes, Enoch, or Enkime, 7th generation human from Adapa, spent considerable time with Enki and Marduk, learning the sciences of the gods and the knowledge that, by general Anunnaki standards, would have been pretty much forbidden to humans, as this was kind of still a time before civilization had been given over to humankind, or more correctly, installed in human consciousness. One of the things in this discourse, I go back, or I involve these names like Enkime and Adapa and the story and whatnot to interrelate to my own. And so you might be wondering why all this obscure knowledge. Well, Enkime had a daughter named Sarpanit. And there you have how it all interrelates.